Hey everyone, welcome to week 3 of the guiding program. I'm coming to you this week from the Wildlife Room because I want to introduce you to someone who lives here. So I'll give you a few clues about who I'm going to introduce you to. He is known to live in the wild in an arid environment. He feeds off things like worms, crickets, cockroaches, some flowers and leafy greens and herbs and things like that. And his species name includes a facial feature. So have a bit of a think, and at the end of this program, I'll introduce you to him and maybe a few other residents in the Wildlife Centre at Rubicon. All right, so before we get to that side of things, we're going to focus on presenting today. And specifically for this video, planning our presentation. So I'm going to go into a bit of detail around, I guess the main things I want you to include in your programs and how to break those down. All right, so I've got a little PowerPoint prepared and I'll move through that nice and quickly, and then I'll introduce you to Priscilla. All right, let's get started. The aim of today's session is to provide you with some tips and tricks to feel confident in your presentations. So I'm specifically going to be focusing on our breakdown of the planning. So what's included in an introduction, what's included in the body of our program, and how do we conclude things. The second part of today, I'll have a separate video and we're looking at techniques for presenting, and I'll go into a bit of information about that in the second video. So planning. The first thing we want to do is ask ourselves why. Why are we planning? It's always good to have a reason for doing things. It makes it easier and we see more value in it. So first of all, why plan? Well, in a nutshell, you're setting yourself up for success. And at the end of the day, I want you to succeed. And what does success look like? Success looks like confidence in your delivery of information. So by putting some time into planning, you're going to create ease of flow of information. Your information will come across in a really clear and concise way, and it'll help make sense for your audience. So taking the time to really think about what information you're going to include and how you're going to order it means it's going to be easy for you to present. There could be a situation where you get off track, you get asked a question, you get interrupted, and putting your information in a specific order is going to help you come back to where you left off easier. So we want things to flow. The next thing is that we want to have a broad knowledge base around our chosen topic. So once we've chosen our topic, we don't want to just jump into deciding what our 3 key points are. We want to look at that topic in detail, find what areas of that topic really interest us, and then once we've got a broad understanding of the topic, we can then move into our key 3 points. The reason for that is that it's easier to find ease of flow and logical points around your topic with a wider knowledge base. It also allows us to change our mind and veer off in different directions if we decide that that's what we want to do. So if we lock ourselves into a main topic and our 3 key points too early, things become a little bit tunnel vision and a bit rigid. So I want you to really take the time to get a broad knowledge base around your chosen topic, and then move into your 3 key points after that. And finally, why do we plan? Because it's going to create confidence. And I mentioned that earlier, but confidence is key. I want you to know the topic that you're talking about. I want you to share that topic looking at your notes as minimal as possible. I want you to enjoy presenting, feel confident in what you're saying, and have a bit of fun with it. So that is why we're looking at the planning side of things. So once we've got our information and we've decided on our key 3 points, which, as I've said, you may change your mind during the planning side of things, which is okay, but we want to put our information in under these 3 topic areas. So first of all, introduction. Introduction is only 10% of our program. And that means that if your program goes for 15 minutes, that's only 1.5 minutes of introduction time. But your introduction has some key ingredients that I'm going to share with you. Next is the body. 85% of our program, it's the bulk of our information. That is where we introduce our 3 main points and we go into detail. So yeah, you want to be persuasive, you want to be engaging, and you want it to be really interesting. So yeah, so body is the bulk. Then we wrap up with a conclusion. Conclusion is quick and concise, but again, there's some key ingredients. So I'll go into a little bit of detail about that. But let's start with our introduction. As I mentioned, it's only 10% of our program, but it includes quite a number of key ingredients. So first of all, we want to start with an attention grabber. What's an attention grabber? Well, I guess we could also refer to it as a hook. We want our audience to want to stick around. So attention grabber could be anything from a story. You could tell a captivating story around your topic. You could ask a rhetorical question or a thought-provoking question. An example of that, and I'm going to give some examples relating to the mistletoe bird program that I've done because you've already seen it. But a rhetorical question could be, have you ever wondered why people kiss under mistletoe and how it became a Christmas tradition? Stick around and I'll share that with you. Or you might ask, what if your survival depended on where you went to the toilet? Well, I'm going to introduce you to a species that relies on just that. So think about how you could ask a rhetorical question to grab your audience's attention. Other examples of attention grabbers could be stating a shocking statistic or some headline. You could pass around a photo or a prop or show it in the video side of things. Or you could use a visual aid to help grab your audience's attention. But once you've got their attention, you want to create relevance. So why is the information that you're going to share relevant to your audience? So find some sort of connection, some sort of relevant reason why your audience would want to know about your content. Next, in our introduction is credibility. Okay, so who are you and why should the audience listen to you? So you want to create trust. Trust that you are the right person to share the information and trust that you know what you're talking about. So when we're talking about credibility, people get a little bit nervous here and they go, well, I'm not an expert on this topic and I'm not qualified and I don't know this area, but I want you to paint the picture that you are. Credibility doesn't have to be a qualification. It doesn't have to be, a decade of work in that particular region. You don't have to be a biologist. You don't have to be a park ranger, but you need to be genuinely interested in what you're talking about. Hey, I'm Megan. I'm going to be talking to you today about a particular species that's found in an arid environment. And the reason I want to share it with you is because I've been visiting this national park since I was 10 years old. Every summer, we'd come out here with the family, with the caravan, and I got a genuine interest in this environment and the species that lived within it. So that's one example of being credible. Another is, while I was at TAFE and studying outdoor recreation, I based my project around the Grampians and I became genuinely fascinated with the wild flowers that grow here in the springtime. So I decided to apply for a job out here, and since doing these wildflower wilderness walks, my love and knowledge of the area has grown significantly. So I'm really excited to share what I've learned with you today. So there's different ways of making yourself credible, but it's really important part of creating that trust between you and your audience. The next thing you want to include is you want to introduce your main point. So what is the main focus of your program? For the mistletoe bird, it is about that awesome relationship between mistletoe and the mistletoe bird. For that Grampians person that I was just making credible, it's about the wild flowers that grow in the springtime in the Grampians National Park. So what is your main point? Please introduce it. And finally, your introduction should finish with a brief preview statement. So you've introduced your main point, but then what are your key 3 points that you're going to be touching on? Or what's the message that you're trying to get across to your audience? So by the end of this program, I want you to know how to spot mistletoe when you're driving on the highways around the state. And I also want you to understand the really cool relationship that mistletoe has with the mistletoe bird. So think about a brief preview statement and how you can sort of do a really quick summary of your program without giving too much away. So that's your introduction. Attention grabber, create relevance in your topic to your audience, make yourself credible as the presenter, introduce your main point, and then give a really brief preview statement. Remember, only 10% of your program. The next thing is your body. So you've introduced your main topic, you've done a brief preview statement, and then you're going to move straight into the first of your 3 main points of the body. Okay, so it's really important that you create logic with the order of your information, and there's different ways of doing that. So here I have, I guess, given some examples of ways to order your information. So you may be focusing on an issue, okay? And so main point 1, you're highlighting the problem. Main point 2, you're looking at the solution. And main point 3, what is the benefit of solving that problem? Okay, so it could be an invasive species, it could be an introduced species, it could be conflict in the area. So problem, solution, benefit. Another way to order your information is looking at chronological order, so time. So you could start from old towards new, or the order, or you could start new to old. So you want things to be in a logical time frame order if it's time that you're focusing on. You might be looking at the history of the area. You might be looking at the geological formation of the area. Again, old, how did it start, transitioning to new to now. Okay. The next is spatial. So you could be talking about moving around the area, or you've got your 3 key points starting in the west, moving to the central and heading to the east, or north to south. So think about spatial if you're talking about traveling across an area, or your key 3 points are located in different areas around your location. You might look on a map and put them into a spatial order. The next is, I guess we could look at it in a medical point of view, but the cause, the symptoms, and the solution. Okay, so that's just another way of ordering information. But I guess when I think about the mistletoe example, the mistletoe bird and mistletoe example that I showed you last week, topical would be how, like if I think about the order that I used, topical would be how I made it make sense. So there was no clear start or finish in terms of ordering my information best. But for me, the best way was introducing the two species, talking about the life cycle and how they work together in terms of surviving, and then finishing off by, I guess, emphasizing how that plays a key role in the ecosystem and how you can spot mistletoe in the tree. So for me, that was the most logical order of information, and I want you to just think about logic. So you don't have to use one of these: problem, solution, benefit, sequential or chronological, spatial, but you need to really think about what is the best order or most logical order for me to put my information together in. All right, continuing with the body of the program, and I've mentioned this multiple times, but we don't really want more than 3 main points. 3 is the magic number when it comes to putting our information together. It keeps things simple, it's easy to follow and stay on track, and it ensures your audience will remember more of your content. Once we go above 3, we're really going to struggle to have our audience come away remembering what we're talking about. So what are the key 3 points that you want to share? And sometimes we want to share so much more information, but we just need to comb it out so that we've got those key 3 points. So the body, when we look at how we can support the information that we're trying to get across, your body should include evidence. And how do we include evidence? So you can use things like examples, stories, statistics. You might include quotes. Think about how you can really get that information across. And we know there's different types of learners, so we want to try and reach out to everyone, but we want to emphasize the message that we're trying to get across. The next thing I want to touch on is transitioning from one point to the next So like I said, 3 key points, and you can think about the wording you use to move from one point to the next. So I'm going to start today's program by introducing you to whatever species or topic that you're going to talk about, and then you will move on to your first point, going into a bit of detail. Secondly, I'm going to be talking about or introducing you to, and thirdly, I'd like to talk about this, and this. So think about the wording you use. It doesn't have to be firstly, secondly, and thirdly. It could be, I'd like to begin by introducing you to. Next, I'm going to be talking about, and to wrap up my program, I would like to touch on this, that, and the other. So think about that. Think about making it really clear when you've wrapped up your first point and you're moving into your second, and then how you're going to move into your third. One thing you want to be careful about is mentioning "and finally," because finally is a good way to introduce and start your conclusion, and you don't want your audience to get confused between your third point or your last main point and your conclusion. Okay, so wording matters. And finally, conclusion. So this is only 5% of our program, and it's a really great way to re-emphasize the key message you're trying to get across, and summarizing your 3 main points. So we're not introducing any new information in our conclusion. All the new information is included in the body of our program, but we want to recap. So today we spoke about wildflowers of the Grampians, and I touched on a rare species, a really common species, and a really unique species. And they were this, that, and the other. But when we think about our conclusion, if there's one thing our audience goes away with, we want it to be some sort of call to action or take home message. So what does that mean? Well, when we look back at that ordering or that sequential order of things, and we look back at the purpose of our program, well, we want our audience to feel something or do something or behave in a particular way after our program. So maybe it's that they're aware of how to spot a certain species. Maybe it's they know how to behave so that they're looking after and not impacting that species habitat. Maybe it's a new fascination with a new species that they didn't really know much about. And I know I'm using animals and species a lot as examples, but you have the opportunity to focus on anything you want within that national park. So referring back to the questions from assessment task 1, there's a whole heap of key topics there, but you can go broader than that. That's not the limit. So think about when you're choosing a topic and you've got your 3 main points, I want you to really think about what you want your audience to come away with, what coming away knowing, or how you want them to behave afterwards. So some sort of call to action. You might talk about groups that they can get involved in the park. You might talk about an event that you've got coming up in the park that they could get involved in. Once you've made it clear what your call to action or take home message is, I want you to ask if there are any questions. And this is where having a broad knowledge base on your topic is going to come in really handy. And then you're going to be able to answer some of those questions. So throwing it out to your audience is a really great way to wrap things up. And once you've finished with the questions, or if you're running out of time and you can't answer all the questions, tell your audience to come and see you after the program and you're happy to chat a bit more. But you want to thank your guests for coming along. So thank them for being there, for taking part in the program, and wish them well before you say your farewells. So today's program, planning and organization, how to prepare a presentation. Key ingredients: introduction, body, and conclusion. 10% is our introduction, short, concise, but some key ingredients. We want to have an attention grabber. We want to create relevance between our audience and our content. We want to create ourselves or pitch ourselves as a credible presenter. What's our main point? And what's a brief preview statement into our program? The body. What are our 3 key points and what is the most logical order to put our information in? And then including in our body some sort of evidence, story, examples. So really, really bulking out those 3 key points with that evidence. And then wrapping up with the conclusion. What was our key message? What were our 3 key points? Recapped in a really concise way. And then, take home message, any questions, and thank yous. All right, so that was part 1 of today's session, and I'm now going to introduce you to someone. Okay, I've moved inside the enclosure space, and the reason I've done this is to give you an example of an attention grabber. So I hooked you in at the start, hopefully, by telling you I'm going to introduce you to a species that resides here and giving you a few clues to guess what it was. And I don't know what you came up with, but I'm going to introduce you to Priscilla now. And Priscilla, so what were my clues? My clues were some of the food that it eats. So it eats crickets, and I've got some examples of its food here. But these are some crickets, and there's cockroaches, and we cut up other veggies and fruit for Priscilla. In the wild, he's in an arid environment, and what you'll see is that Priscilla was injured. So in the wild, he probably wouldn't survive. And the reason he's called Priscilla is because it's actually quite hard to work out if they're
it's hard to tell the difference between the males and the females. It's to do with the males have one main gland and the females have two on the underside of their body. And for a long time, it was believed that Priscilla was a girl, but Priscilla's actually a boy, and he is Queen of the Desert. So Priscilla, where are you? There you are. Priscilla is a bearded dragon. So this is Priscilla here. And as you can see, his little stumpy foot is the injury. So he would struggle in the wild, and so he lives here. But he's a bearded dragon, as I mentioned. And what bearded dragons, the reason they're called bearded dragons is because his under chin there, when he's angry or scared or feels threatened, he puffs that up and takes a high stance. And so that's a protective mechanism that bearded dragons have from, I guess, birds of prey and other potential predators. But I might open this up and see if Priscilla wants to say hello. Hey, Priscilla. Not overly friendly today. But we get Priscilla out and let him have a little run around here. But yeah, anyway, that's Priscilla. And he's a lot of fun. So he's about 8 years old and has been here that I believe that whole time. So yeah, found in the wild as a very young bearded dragon, and then was brought here so that he's got a better chance of surviving. Anyway, hopefully I'll be able to introduce you to some of the other species that reside here at Rubicon. But for now, that's the end of video 1, and I will see you for part 2 later on. Okay, farewell for now.